Good morning. My name is Kirby Arsenault, former chairman of LAGCOE. I have the fortune to introduce our speakers this morning, Mark Mathis. Mark is a producer of a few films. One will be talked about today, but one is Spalled and others is Factured. Mark has spent most of his career challenging widely accepted ideas that are simply untrue. His latest project, documentary film Factured, explains how language is used to dangerously deceive us about the most essential component to the function of the modern world, energy. Factured is a follow-up to Mark's highly successful film Spalled. Spalled examined the public ignorance of the central role all plays in our lives. Before becoming a documentary filmmaker, Mark Mathis was a TV news anchor, a reporter, media consultant, trainer, and talk radio host. He is the author of Feeding the Media Blast, published in US, India, China, Russia, and Korea. His current venture is called Clear Energy Alliance. Please welcome Mark Mathis.
How are y'all this morning? Good. I hadn't been back in Louisiana since 2010, when the Deepwater Horizon blew up. We were making Spoiled. We were almost done with the film, and when that happened, I said, "Wow, we got to stop making this film. We got to go down to Louisiana, shoot that, and then change our film, adapt it to the film." The biggest black eye that the industry has had in a very long time, maybe if ever, turned out to be excellent for our film. But the good news is it was actually quite good in explaining the situation that we have when it comes to energy and the vital importance that oil and gas plays in our lives. So our project would not be nearly as successful, and I think we were quite successful in taking the film around the country and showing it to people and changing minds, explaining things in a way that people could remember and actually communicate to other people. That's really what I'm all about, and what I want the industry to be all about. And so that's what I'm here today to talk about, is this new film, which talks a lot about language. That's been my deal through life, having a journalism degree, being in the news business, getting out, consulting. Language. It's critically important to everything that we do, and we don't think about the importance of words and the meanings of those words and how those words provide the foundation to our ideas. Those ideas then create our belief system. And those beliefs then become the rules by which we govern ourselves. And ultimately that creates our destiny. So just from words, just from definitions, comes our destiny. This is critically important when it comes to how we run our lives through energy, because so many of the words and phrases that we use are wrong. The definitions are wrong. And that then creates a dangerous situation. When people don't understand the critical importance of what runs everything in their life, everything, you're in a bad spot. People don't know what they should value. And they're being deceived, and they're being deceived with language. This is what Spoiled was all about. In 2006, George W. Bush, in his State of the Union speech, said, "America is addicted to oil." I was watching that speech live, and I thought I was going to hit the floor. What are you talking about? Addicted? What is the definition of an addiction? Something that people get involved with that ultimately degrades and if it continues, will destroy and end their life. Very bad thing, addiction. And you're going to stick it up next to oil and say oil is destroying your life? What in the world Oil is not destroying your life. Oil is your life. Your life wouldn't exist in any way, shape, or form that you would recognize. Even if you went to a third world country. There's enough of penetration of oil and products to third world countries that even those societies would be fundamentally different. But ours would be, I mean, like I said, you would not recognize it. We'd be thrown back into the early 1800s, and we would not be able to survive. This is really important. And when I was taking that film around to theaters around the country, and showing it and talking to audiences, I started thinking more and more about language and words and how many of these words that we use and phrases are absolutely wrong and the danger that that presents to us. So if you look at these, a handful of these terms on the screen, they're all wrong, every one of them. And there are others wrong. Let's just take one. Clean energy. If I tell an audience, clean energy, what's clean energy? Right away. What are they going to say? Solar. What else? Wind and solar. Clean energy. Says who? Under what definition is that clean? Because it's non-carbon based? Because it doesn't burn things? Let me let you in a little secret. All of life is based on burning things. That's what life is. We burn things. We burn wood, we burn oil, we burn gas, we burn things. We burn food. That's what your body does. It burns food. It's like one of those basic words. Oh, it's dirty. You burn stuff. That's the planet. Burning. So that's not a good definition. I have a definition for what I think clean energy is, and that is an energy source that provides substantial, reliable energy. And it actually makes the environment cleaner than if you were not using it. That is the definition of clean energy. And under that definition, what's clean? Oil, natural gas, coal, nuclear, hydro, all clean. Wind and solar, I'm not here to pound on wind and solar, I'm here to present reality. But they are not clean. They do not provide substantial amounts of reliable energy, an affordable energy, and they do not make the environment any cleaner as a result of using them. These other energy sources do. You imagine how you'd run your life if you didn't have, coal and natural gas to provide the electricity that heats and cools and provides the light and machines to run this presentation? What are you going to use instead? What would your environment look like then? So, basic definitions really matter. We've all been brainwashed. Oh, clean, clean. Wind and solar are not clean. The cleanest energy source ever understood by man to this day, and probably all throughout time, is oil and natural gas. So, I made a film out of this central premise. And I'll show you here a quick trailer for the film.
An unexpected international agreement emerged from the G7 summit.
World leaders have agreed that the world should end its reliance on fossil fuels by the end of the century.
What are you talking about? How are we going to get off of the energy sources that supply everything?
They want to keep us addicted!
They want to keep us addicted!
The way we talk about energy is fractured.
We need to end the fossil fuel age and move into something better.
The words we use aren't just misleading, they're outright deceptions, and it's no accident.
You can stand with the oil companies or you can stand up for the American people.
We have been told that energy consumption is bad. We're not looking at the opposite side of the equation. What if you didn't have that energy? What would your life be like then? Without hydrocarbon energy, most of us are desperately poor and just trying to survive. Not facing this reality is the ultimate form of denial. We're being lied to. We're being propagandized by language.
Environmentalism,
fracking, global warming, climate change,
renewable energy,
green energy,
clean energy,
big oil.
We are awash in information, but we are drowning in lies.
We no longer need the dead economy of the fossil fuel industry.
Well, that's ridiculous. We have to do things, build things, make things. If people started challenging the words and the phrases that other people use, we could correct this thing. Energy is good. It makes your life good. And I will not let somebody try to shame me into thinking I'm bad because I use energy.
We're not addicted, but we are spoiled. That's what that film is all about, is that we're so spoiled that we don't understand or appreciate the incredible value that oil and natural gas have to our lives. So one of the things that you noticed in this trailer was the only person you saw yapping was me. And there's a reason for that. When I went out and started trying to raise money to make this film, I could not pull enough money together to do it in the traditional way of a documentary film, the way that I did Spoiled, which is flying all around the country and interviewing some of the smartest people in the world about energy, and just couldn't raise enough money. So at that point, we had to make a decision, either move on to another project or do it in the format that we decided to use, which was me just talking. And then we would take pieces of that, put it in creatively with the different things as you saw in the trailer. And we thought that that format would work and we could do it on a really tight, small budget. We weren't quite sure if it was going to fly, but actually after we got the film together, we were quite pleased with it. We think it works pretty good. So, so it's an unconventional film in that sense. So among the words and phrases, one we certainly had to get after, the title of the film, Factured. It's about, not just hydraulic fracturing, but about how our language is fractured and we're being deceived by the way that words are thrown around and the improper definitions and the wrong words. So that's the name of it. So we took this phrase, what the frack, and look, what's really going on here? And it's the same as addicted. This association with a negatively charged word that gets people to think in a negative way about something. In this case, hydraulic fracturing.
For people who don't even know what fracking is, tell them what the definition of fracking is.
Keep it clean.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep it clean. With a name like fracking.
When you hear that word, frack, it's an aggressive, negative word. This is an F and some dashes and a CK. It's being compared to, it's like the mother of all obscenities.
Oh, fudge.
So please don't frack my mother.
Don't frack me! Don't frack me!
You've seen this, right? Right? You've seen this image, you've seen this video, you've heard of this film, films, actually two of them, Gasland, okay? Documentaries, well, supposedly documentary films, really propaganda films, showing this guy lighting his sink water on fire. And, people see this. Very few people actually see the films, but they see the big flash on YouTube or they see this image and they think, this is what happens when wells are hydraulically fractured. I get asked that all the time. I tell people what I do, out playing around the golf or meeting somewhere socially, and it's like, oh, but doesn't that fracking stuff pollute groundwater? It's difficult, but this kind of stuff, because it's visual and emotive, it gets legs. And in spite of the fact that this thing has been debunked, both films, all the way down to the bottom, this thing's been completely debunked. It doesn't matter. This thing lives on. People still believe this stuff. So when we were making this film, I was like, even though the original film is, I don't know, probably about 8 or 9 years old now, we gotta continue to debunk and refute this garbage because it's out there. So, so we did that in the film.
Whoa, Jesus Christ.
When you look at the money shot of Gasland, it's a guy who's lighting his sink water on fire. So wow, that's a pretty scary image. But the truth of the matter is, this man's water well was drilled through a formation that contains naturally seeping methane gas. And they've known about it for decades. It's probably been leaking for thousands of years. Colorado regulators came in and investigated and said, no, this flaming faucet had absolutely nothing to do with hydraulic fracturing. Then there was Gasland 2, where the filmmaker featured a man who was lighting a garden hose on fire that was supposedly hooked up to a water line. But in fact, it was proven in a Texas court that this hose was hooked up to a natural gas vent. So this was a complete lie that the filmmaker presented as evidence that hydraulic fracturing was polluting this man's groundwater. So these are highly emotive images that are simply untrue.
Makes me crazy. That's why I do this kind of work. So here's another term that I don't like. It's a term that's hard not to use because it's such a core piece of how we talk about energy. We say fossil fuel. You know, fossil fuel. So, okay, what's wrong with that? Fossil fuel. Well, you start breaking it down and you say, you know, actually, if you pay attention to language and language and how it sticks in your brain, it does matter. Because you take the first word, fossil, what does fossil mean? It's old, ancient, not relevant to your life in the least. Does that define oil, gas, and coal? It's the exact opposite. There's nothing more critically important to your life than the energy sources that run and do everything. So it's the opposite of a fossil. And the second word, fuel, okay, well, you know, this is a little better. It gets you closer to the mark. I mean, the big thing that defines the modern world is transportation fuels. So, yeah, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, these sorts of things. And okay, all right, so that gets us closer. But it omits everything else that these resources do. So I don't like the term. I came up with my own. I call it tech map. And that's how I would like to define fossil fuels. I don't think that'll ever happen, but I'm trying to get people to think differently about how they talk about energy so they have a much better understanding of what is real.
If every fifth grader was taught, these are our tech map resources: coal, oil, gas. And here's why we call them tech map. Because it does all of these things in our life: transportation, electricity, cooking, heating, manufacturing, agriculture, and products. If they knew that in the 5th grade, and then later on in their life somebody said, well, we got to get off tech map resources, the kid would say, what are you talking about? How are we going to get off of the energy sources that supply everything?
And yet, I would venture to say maybe even a majority of people believe that that actually can happen. I mean, you heard it at the G20 summit, it's in the trailer, where all these nations with the G20, so these are the best 20 nations in the world. We're going to be fossil-free by 2100. Is there anybody who in their right mind thinks that's even possible at all? I mean, it's lunacy. But yet you have the leaders of the dominant nations of the world talking this nonsense. There's no pathway to making this thing happen. But yet, if we just say it, if we just, hold a piece of paper, that's going to make it happen. It's crazy. So another word that I don't like is alternative, and for more than one reason. First off, if something's an alternative, that means, I'm not going to drink water, I'm going to drink Kool-Aid. I'm going to drink something else, or I'm not going to have steak, I'm going to have lobster, or whatever it is. You're going to do one thing completely instead of something else. So our wind and solar, geothermal, insert your renewable, are they a true alternative to oil, gas, and coal? You can't run any of those without oil and gas. You can't create windmills and solar panels. You can't maintain infrastructure. You can't run your grid on wind and solar. Not today, not next year, not 10 years. I don't think ever. You can't. It's not possible. There's no way to store that energy, and electricity has to be used on scale when it's generated. So it's not an alternative. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that through all of humanity, there was a dominant, almost virtually singular energy source. It's called carbohydrates. So that was the food that we ate, so that we'd go out and plow the earth or hunt the animals and feed ourselves, cut down the wood, build homes, tools, carbohydrate-based. That was all of humanity through 98% of humanity. And then there was an alternative energy, coal. That was the dividing line in history. And then came oil and gas. That's when everything changed. That's when we went from brutal, difficult, short lifespans to the world that we have today. From carbs to carbon. But you'll never hear anybody talk about that we do use this alternative energy as opposed to backbreaking labor fueled by carbohydrates.
Since the hydrocarbon era has begun, infant mortality has plunged. Women dying in birth, it's almost unheard of today in the modern world. Per capita incomes have increased 7-fold just since 1900. Drought-related deaths have plunged. Not so long ago, somebody dying at 30 years old was an expectation. Now people are living to be 80. The list goes on and on and on, where we are living better, longer lives, much safer and more comfortable. And for us to have this idea of the wonderfulness of earlier times before hydrocarbon energy, it's a fantasy. It's a dangerous fantasy.
The raw northern troops hadn't meant to run that day, but run they did.
The number one tool of a doctor in the Civil War was a saw. The number one tool of a dentist was a pair of pliers. These are the realities that we forget about because we didn't live in the carbohydrate age. If you went back there for a week, I think you'd want to come back here pretty fast.
So here's a concept that we have in the film, which is another fascinating thing to me as I think about how we live our lives. So anything that we decide that we want to do, there's a little thing that happens in our heads. Sometimes it just happens on its own. We don't really even think about it. Sometimes we actually put pen to paper and we figure it out. And that's weighing things pros and cons, good and bad. Okay? I want to buy this kind of car versus this kind of car, and here's the pluses and minuses, here's the cost, here's what I like about this one, here's what I like about that one, here's what I don't like. We do it with everything. You have to choose, do I want to come listen to Mark Mathis speak, or do I want to go to someplace over here and hear somebody else? And it just sort of just happens. Good and bad, pluses and minuses, pros and cons. But when it comes to energy, we're not doing that as a society. We all want to focus, we've been told to focus, we've been brainwashed to focus on the tailpipe, the negative consequences of energy usage. But you never hear anybody talking about, okay, well, there's some negatives, and there always are. But what are the positives? Let's look at it in context. And then the thing you never hear is back to our word alternative. All right, you don't like this. You don't like oil. We think it's bad, it's dirty. Okay, what are you going to use then? How are you going to fly planes, drive cars? How are you going to make products? What exactly, how? They don't know. The logic stops there. I just would like to have a society where we're paying attention to pluses and minuses, alternatives, and we're weighing out the balance sheet, which we don't do. It's just this constant barrage of, we don't like this negative aspect, that negative aspect, that negative aspect. Okay. Propose something else. They can't because there isn't anything else.
You have to look at the positive side. What am I getting out of this? What society, the planet, what are we all getting out of the positive side? And how does that stack up to the negative side? And there is a negative side, but by the way, there's a negative side to every kind of energy production.
Shell no! Shell no!
We recently saw a protest in Seattle against Shell Oil, where they were moving an oil platform to the Arctic. And so we had hundreds of protesters show up in their kayaks and their canoes, and not realizing that those kayaks and canoes and their life jackets and most of their clothing is made of oil. The irony here is amazing.
Wouldn't you like to get inside the heads of some of these people? No. I know, it's scary, right? No, I don't want to go there. I actually would. Just for even just 10 minutes. I mean, do you grasp your hypocrisy here? Do you have any clue? And if your little canoe and everything, if it's not going to happen that way, how are you going to do this? You're going to carve out a tree? I mean, they'd probably say, yeah, but okay, good luck. It's an amazing thing. So another one, all the above, right? Politicians, they love this. They didn't do all the above, right? And it's sort of their way of grudgingly admitting we need the baseline energy sources that do everything. But, wind and solar, geothermal, biomethane. But our brains are interesting in that when you say a word, words have meaning. Above. So when we hear above, what does that say to us? Actually above the ground. So the marketing side, you see windmills, solar panels, maybe, cornfield for ethanol. It's just your brain locks in above. But that's not how we run everything. We run everything in the world on all the below.
You have to look at scale. What's the percentage of energy that we use in the United States? And when you look at wind and solar, it's only contributing a little over 2% of what we consume, a pretty tiny amount. So the big lie is we can move away from coal, oil, natural gas, and nuclear power, and we can exist just on this tiny amount of energy. Well, that would be like saying, okay, we have to move things on ships and trains and planes and tractor-trailer rigs. Okay, we're going to stop that, and everything's got to get moved in a smart car. And if it doesn't fit in a smart car, it doesn't get moved. Well, that's ridiculous. We have to do things, build things, make things. That's what all of the below resources do. And we're not going to fit our lives into a smart car.
How about these smart cars? Have you seen those? How smart do you feel? Looking out your sunroof at the underbelly of an 18-wheeler. You make a wrong turn, you're into the wheel.
My house, we call those dumb cars. I can't believe anybody would actually get on a highway in one of those things. Holy cow. I mean, you imagine having an accident in one of those things? Whew. No thanks. So we do some other things in the film besides just language. We throw out some comparisons. I want people to understand the limitations that wind and solar and some other energy technologies have. And they're not energy sources, they're technologies. And so, in this one section, we compare wind against natural gas just on land usage and what that entails. So just to get a grasp, it's the scale of the limitations of these technologies.
Just to give you a sense of scale, to replace one average natural gas well, which takes up about, say, 4 acres, would require 2,500 acres of wind power. So you're using up massive amounts of land, 2,500 acres, to give you the same amount of power that you can get in 4 acres. You would have to cover this nation in windmills in an attempt to try to replace the electricity that we generate from coal, natural gas, and nuclear power, and even that wouldn't get the job done.
And when you look at multiple laterals that they're drilling off of these natural gas, even my 2,500 acres is understated. It's more than that. It might be double. It's crazy. The difference is just trying to get people to understand the limitations. So, words again, words, every single day. I don't think I can get through a day and not hear climate change. Climate change, oh my God, climate change. If you want to get my opinion on climate change, we can do that in the Q&A section. But for our purposes here, this is just talk. Climate change, talk. Well, let's look at how we live, our actions. What we are really concerned about today is climate control. I am up here, I got this jacket on, in Louisiana. Now it's a little cooler this week, but we didn't have all this nice air conditioning and the lights and everything. You have to be sweating big time. We don't want that. Think about how you live your life. You want climate control. So it's getting up in the morning and how you temperature your house, and even in your car. If you're like me, you park your car under a tree, because when you come out, it's all temperature control. Climate control, all the time. That's how we live. See, she's a little cold. She does. It's not the climate control is not quite right for her. She's got a little extra wrap. That's how we live. So there's just a big difference in how we talk and how we live.
But I think we came from another planet, and the reason is because we don't like it here. I mean, why, if we're from here, if we belong on Earth, why aren't we comfortable on Earth at all? We need nice, smooth surfaces and right angles, and we need it to be cool and not too hot, that's just perfect.
And it's kind of a dark side of energy. It's made us weak and vulnerable. We don't know what it would be like not to have it.
The people in here, they've been inside from the start. They haven't had to survive. And they just don't get it. They can't.
This is sort of what apocalyptic movies are all about, is how would we adjust if suddenly all this stuff that we depend upon is gone? We don't have air conditioning. We don't have a way to quickly and easily get from point A to point B. We don't have food in supermarkets waiting for us. What would that be like? We're fascinated by it because we know the results would be horrific.
So we also get into a few technical things in the backside of the film, just because I think that they're important. You've heard of this, the strategy that's employed by anti-oil and gas activist groups, sue and settle. You guys heard about this? Paid attention to it? Yes? No? Sue and settle? You should know about it because this is affecting your industry and it's affecting your life. It's driving up the cost of everything. This was out of control in the Obama administration. And the new head of the EPA is doing his best to rein it in. I think Scott Pruitt is doing a phenomenal job. But the way sue and settle works is that you have an activist group that is trying to do everything they can to impede or shut down oil and gas production. And they have their friends, literally their friends, who work in the United States government, at the EPA. Sometimes it's Interior, there's other places within the federal and state governments where this happens. And they communicate back and forth and they talk about something that the activist groups can sue the industry on and bog everything down or shut everything down in some cases. And so then through this unethical, unholy alliance between activists on the outside and people we pay their salaries on the inside, they're able to clog up the works and do it bureaucratically. Instead of through the lawmaking process, look, if we need to make a change on something, we have a mechanism for doing that. It's called the United States Congress. But they go around that. And it's sucking untold hundreds of billions of dollars out of our economic wealth in this country every year. And a ton out of your industry because big companies are having to pay to deal with this kind of bureaucratic activism.
Let's say the EPA fails to meet a deadline. People within the EPA notify people in big green groups, hey, sue us on this issue. And the EPA should defend itself against the green group, but they're all buddies together anyway. So what they do is they move to a settlement, and then the industry that's affected and the public and the states affected don't even find out about it until it's filed in court.
This circumvents the normal process of rulemaking and circumvents the state's authority to decide what the regulations are in their state to comply with the Clean Air Act.
Then when they settle that issue, those lawyers for the green groups have to be paid. Well, guess who pays those lawyers? We do. So we're paying the green group's lawyers for the right to sue us and to settle and to create new expensive regulations for all of us to live under.
It's interesting when I watch some of this stuff back, how these words, how they just get inside your head. When we shot this, I kept saying green group. That's not the right word either. It's just an activist group. It's anti-energy activist group. They're not about what's green. And even green's wrong, by the way. Okay? It's not being, more friendly to the environment, Mother Nature, even Mother Nature's wrong. Mother Nature. You think the earth is kind and loving and wonderful to us? I mean, nature wants you dead. Viruses, extreme heat, extreme cold, animals, wild animals. That's why we build homes and buildings and create societies and try to keep nature off of us. Nature's nothing. It's just not a mother, believe me. So all of these words and phrases are wrong. And what I'm doing in trying to bring your attention to it through the films and the way that I talk about this stuff is really to give just an anchor point for people so that they have a different way to think and to talk to others. So that when you hear all the above, it clicks in your head. You know what? I heard that Mathis guy, and he brought up a good point. It's not all the above, it's all the below that runs everything. It's to help people sort of put this different kind of way of thinking and vocabulary in their heads so that they'll be effective. One thing that I have been encouraged about in the last few years as far as the industry is concerned is that it's starting to wake up to the fact that text doesn't really get it done in the modern world today. It just doesn't. So the industry is very good about producing studies and writing things down and making points that run through, logic and reason and data and evidence. And all that's good, and I hope that stuff is necessary, it needs to happen. But when you're trying to communicate an idea, even within your own industry, let alone the general public, how many people are going to go to a website and go, okay, well, I'm going to take the next 20 minutes and I'm going to read through this. That's not something short. That's not like a big, I'll do it because that's what I do. I constantly study. That's how I make my living. But people aren't going to do that. So I am encouraged that the industry is starting to wake up. Things have to be visual. And if they can be moving pictures, even better. And we have these ridiculously short attention spans because of technology. You've heard the whole goldfish thing, right? You got the attention span. That goldfish now has a greater attention span than most people. You heard that, right? 8 seconds. Wow. Trying to explain complex topics in really short amount of time. It's incredibly difficult. So you've got to have images that speak to an idea. It's got to provoke an emotion. It's difficult to do, but that's what the industry really needs to do for itself. So that's why in the film, I do things like this, point out this crazy hypocrisy of these people, protesting oil when they're surrounded by it, or you saw this with the Dakota Access Pipeline. All these so-called environmentalists, another wrong word, protesting and doing what? Destroying the environment. I mean, hundreds of huge trucks had to be loaded to carry off all the junk and the garbage that these environmentalists left behind. That's what you have. Environmentalists protesting a pipeline. Here's what you got with a pipeline without an environmentalist. I mean, these are the things you gotta hit people in different ways, and you got to use images. So that's why I've been making films and trying to get people to absorb ideas and getting them to understand it's got to be on a screen, it's got to be visual, it's got to be emotive, and it's got to be transferable, one person to another. Otherwise, these ideas just don't live. That has provoked me to actually move on to something different. I love making documentary films. I may make another one, I don't know. But for the moment, what I've decided is I've formed a new organization called Clear Energy Alliance, and we're just making short videos. So, and in terms of the internet, they're not even that short. They're like 3 to 5 minutes. To try to explain a complex topic in 30 seconds, it's pretty difficult. Now, we'll have some stuff that's real short, but we're producing videos that are 3 to 5 minutes long. And we go after little concepts, like some of those that I've described here today. And with that in mind, making them visual and shareable. So I've got a short clip. This is like on a 4-minute video. I'm going to show you about the last minute of it. We're talking about Al Gore's astonishing hypocrisy. Did you know when Al Gore's first film came out, An Inconvenient Truth, the National Center did a study and found out that he used 22 times the amount of electricity than the average household. So this is the guy preaching to all the rest of us, we've got to use less energy, and using 22 times more than us. That's just electricity on his house. We're not talking about jets and everything. So then his new film came out, and guess what? Did he rein it in? He uses 32 times the amount of electricity than the average household today. It's getting worse. So we made a little video about it. Here's the last minute of it.
Gore had to know his electricity bills would be scrutinized when the new film came out. Yet, he became an even bigger energy hog. What the former vice president's actions tell us is that it's more important for him to live the life of an energy-guzzling fat cat than it is to be a crusader who lives modestly so he actually has some credibility. Finally, and this is the most important fact of all, when Al Gore's term as vice president ended, he was worth about $2 million. He then focused all his attention on becoming the world's chief climate change alarmist. It was an extremely lucrative career move. He's now estimated to be worth $300 million. So ask yourself, what's driving Al Gore? Is it really a sincere concern for the planet? Or is sounding the alarm about climate change a great way to get rich? Power on, America.
So Clear Energy Alliance has been producing these short videos. We're making them now. Unfortunately, I thought we would be up and running before I came here to give this presentation, but we still need about another month or 4 or 5 weeks or so. But we're going after different items, anything related to energy, where we can show people things that are being hidden from them, things that'll stick, things that they can talk to other people about, things they can share. We hope that you will join us in this effort so that we can grow this thing to be big. And so I don't, look, if you've got a card, you want to get on our email list that will go out whenever we produce a new video. We'll just send you one email. We will not abuse your email box, but we'll send it to you. And we'll make it easy for you, if you liked it, to send it to somebody else. And that's how we're going to grow this thing. It's a different strategy than what I've been doing as far as making the films. But we think this is going to be good. So you can do that. You can drop off your card, or you can just even write down my email address. It's very easy to remember. You can just send it to me. Say, hey, yeah, put us on your list. mark@markmathis.com. Easy to remember. mark@markmathis.com. MATHIS. So that's my presentation for this morning. I'm going to be available here to answer questions for the next, I don't know, look at the clock, 15 or 20 minutes. So, questions? Yes, sir.
Mark, I was wondering, when you're here presenting to us, and you do very good work, I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Have you been in any forums where it's not the industry, where it's the other side, and was it a positive experience? I know there's like this in diversity, but what have you done to try and bring the naysayers?
So I would, first off, when we had Spoiled came out, we were in theaters. I was in front of audiences in theaters about 180 times all across the country. So it was exhausting. We would go into a city and we would be on screens and we would be there. We would run typically 9 shows, and every show I'd be there introducing the film, and afterwards I'd be answering questions. And so every place we went, there were people in the audience who wanted to yell and scream, and some people did yell and scream. Ah! You know, okay, let's have a conversation. So that was an interesting experience. Some people are completely unreachable, and I just dismiss them. Other people are rational and reasonable, and I actually had good response with a lot of people in the theater. The difficult part when it comes to engaging antis is they're not persuadable. They don't want it. Their whole thing is they're anti-this. So I write them off. They also don't want to get in the room and get on a stage with anybody who actually knows what they're talking about. They avoid that like the plague. Do you know that Al Gore will not debate anyone? No. He's been challenged, offered $1 million to debate. He will not do it. Because he'd be destroyed. There's so much lies and propaganda in these films that he makes. You can just wreck him. So they really avoid that. They don't want to get in the room with somebody who can actually challenge them and bring up things and say, well, what about this, what about that? And I would love, look, to have me and pick your anti, and we'll just have a little debate here. Are you kidding me? That's my dream. They have no interest in doing it. And so the other thing is, look, even just trying to, my mission, as I've defined it, is starting with the industry itself, because the industry does not protect and defend and advance itself in any way that it should. And I get it. I'm a word person, okay? I walk around the convention hall and I see all this stuff, and it makes me feel really small. My intellect, I cannot grasp what the people that thought of making this equipment and what they do with this equipment and their brains and the math that they run and it's mind-boggling to me. I get a dose of how not intelligent I really am when I see that, because all I do is talk. Okay, I analyze, I think, and I talk. You guys do. And so all your brains, you're wired up, you're engineers, you're all about doing. And you're not much into talking. So I get it. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to do my thing, make a living for myself, and do something that I think is positive and good, accurate for the country. And if I could just get people in the industry and help them through the tools that I provide, through my movies, through these videos that we're producing, to say, hey, to make it easy to think about this stuff and share this stuff, I'm helping a lot. And that will help reach out to more of a general audience. If you can just get that, gigantic success. As far as the antis, they're too vested in their anti-ness. So I don't worry too much about them. Now, if somebody actually wants to come over, I'm all for it. I would love it. It's fun. The most fun I had taking Spoiled to the theaters was having somebody crazy in the audience. It was a blast. Really get into explaining things and show the irrationality of the position of the anti. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Who would you say are the main people or entities that are pushing all of this? I mean, and why and how are they so successful when all the facts are on your side, when there's very few people like you, and there's millions of people on your side?
So, where is this all coming from? I tell you, you get a real insight to it if you want to do the brain damage on this. There's a report that came out a couple years ago out of the Senate Minority Report called the Billionaires Club. And it tracked money that comes into the anti-energy movement. And where does that money come from? It comes from a really small number of sources, billionaires, people like George Soros, people like the Heinz Foundation. So a small number of foundations that take money and they share it with each other and they move it back and forth. And actually what is really frustrating is that they move it back and forth between 501c3 nonprofits and 501c4s. They illegally move this money in ways that the United States government is aware of and is doing nothing about. The IRS should be all over these people, and I don't know that they're doing anything. And so it's the viewpoint of gigantically wealthy people like Tom Steyer, for example, who made billions, actually, in the oil and gas industry as a stock player. And then now they're attacking the industry. And then they have vested interests in mostly wind and solar, and subsidies. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is that you haven't heard anything about. We've got a video coming on this. Is a bunch of that money. People are talking, Trump and Russia, right? The collusion, Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia. I mean, crazy amounts of news coverage on this. Well, Russia is involved in propagandizing the American public. Have been for a long time. But where they're most involved is in energy. They're funneling money through offshore organizations in Bermuda. They're running it through other billionaire foundations in the United States, and then disseminating it into medium-sized groups that then send it to smaller-sized groups to get it on the air. It's Russian money. Why would Russia do that? And Middle Eastern money. Because hydraulic fracturing has wrecked their world. Russia needs $110 to $120 a barrel a day, a barrel, to run their economy. $50 a barrel is killing them. It's killing these countries in the Middle East. So they're pumping millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, into Europe and into the United States to stir up a bunch of irrational fears in the public to try to create obstacles for independent drillers especially, so that they can reduce the amount of oil and gas on the market and give them the dollars that they need, the money that they need.
Surely there's more money on your side, and why aren't oil and gas or the whole general industry? There's so much money there.
So I hear this all the time, and the antis just come at me with guns blazing. Well, there's so much oil. Okay. Yeah, there is a lot of money to be made in the oil and gas industry, but the amount of money that gets put into this effort, what the oil and gas industry does compared to these anti-activist groups, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars a year at a minimum. The industry does relatively little. It's kind of like this thing that came up about the NRA, when they made this big shooting in Las Vegas, and the NRA, they're so big. And the NRA's did almost nothing legislatively and lobbying. But these other groups spend gigantic amounts of money. So, your teachers union spends like $100 million a year lobbying Congress, and the NRA spends like $2 or $3 million a year. And so all this disinformation is out there. And so you would think, a guy like me, okay, I'm not from the industry, never worked in the industry, didn't know anything about the industry. I'm a media guy. Came out of the news business, consultant, writer, and then I started consulting in the energy sector along with other clients that I had, and that's when I became fascinated by it. You'd think that trying to make a movie like Factured, I'd be able to pull some money together to make that movie. I couldn't. So I had to do with me just running the whole deal on a super small budget. It's because the industry does not really put money into this. And as a matter of fact, when I was doing Spoiled, one of the great frustrations was I just wanted big energy groups to get behind me and, look, you don't have to endorse me. You don't have to say this, anything about this film. You can attack the film on our peak oil side. Do it, whatever. Just raise awareness that we're here. And for the most part, silence.
Why do you think that is?
The antis have created a situation where they come after companies. If you raise your head up and you make it known, like we're going to be, you know, active in trying to beat down anti-oil and gas propaganda, we're going to stick our necks out. They come after you. So it's the lawyers within the major fully integrated oil companies and the giant oil groups. The lawyers have a lot to say. And they say, let our trade group do that. And be soft, be careful, and not get in the fight. That's just the reality of it. Sad. But that's what it is. So, do I have one more or no more? Or okay, we're doing one more and then we're going to wrap it up. Yes, sir.
In the comparison between natural gas and the wind,
yes.
What energy value were you looking at? No mention was what is the standard? You said 4 acres versus
megawatts produced. Megawatts produced.
Yes.
Yes. So equivalent energy produced for the grid versus land usage. That's what we use in that comparison.
What value?
So what value? You know what? Off the top of my head, I cannot recall exactly what was how many megawatts we used to create that standard. I think the megawatts. Actually, I'm sorry, I take it back. The individual well, we looked at the valuation of a single natural gas well and how much energy is produced out of that well. The quantity of that number, the megawatt number, I cannot recall off the top of my head. But and then we extrapolated from that and came up with here's what it would take on a wind-based equivalency. So I have some. I do have some. I know some people still use DVDs. I've got some up front. We sell them for $20 a piece, or you get a couple of them for 30. I've got the long version of Factured, which is full-length feature, 90 minutes, and I've got the broadcast length 52 or 55, and then I also have our shorter version of Spoiled at 55 in case you'd be interested in that. But I also really hope that you will become part of our team spreading the word about Clear Energy Alliance and sharing some of the videos that we create so that we can try to grow this thing and build some momentum for re-educating the public on the most important thing in life. Thanks so much for coming.